am a special education teacher at Crestwood Elementary. I've been teaching there for 3 years. I am proudly the garden team leader at our school, which means I help coordinate and help run with the really powerful team at our school, our garden committee, our garden club, and garden integration into our schools, all of our schools program. I am a NOMI at heart, and NOMIs is what we call ourselves, but what the students call themselves too. It's if you take the word gnome and you take the word homie, and you smush them together, you get the word NOMI. I really, really care about food access, food justice, and working the land as a way for us to connect to our heritage. That's really the bottom line of why I do what I do at Crestwood. For me, it's really important for the students to have a space where they can take back their health. When we work in low-income communities, we're working in communities that have the highest rates of preventable disease. And that's the first thing that we can teach our students, how to take back their health. My first and foremost motivation is for fair food. And I don't mean this kind of fair food. I mean this kind of fair food, where students are growing their own food, they're learning how to cultivate it, and most importantly, they're sharing the food with their community. So I wanted to make the distinction between nutrition and nourishment. Nutrition is a process of eating the right kind of food so you can grow properly, so you can be healthy. And as everybody has pointed this morning, that's the first step in our school gardens. That's the foundation for our school gardens, and that's the first motivation. You know, the nutrition part of it's what gets everybody excited, what gets everybody motivated. The nourishment is the food and the other things, the other systems that we're creating that we need for health and growth. It's the systems the school gardens emulate and create at our schools. It's the long-term plans and the benefits that we see in our school garden programs. So I'd like to introduce you to Sarai. She's one of our NOMIs. This is her at the summer camp where they cooked their own breakfast and lunch. And we gave them butcher paper as a table cover, and it was just for them to reflect on the day's learning. I'm going to zoom in so you can see what she reflected. She wrote, "I feel happy. Good food makes kids feel happy." This is what I'm trying to call the stolen effect of school garden programs. So strawberries are probably the most popular vegetable or fruit in our garden. But the greatest thing about strawberries is that the strawberry plant, the mother plant, will send off runners, and they're called stolons. And eventually, it'll be another mature strawberry plant that will produce. So this is, in turn, what school gardens is doing for our schools. So we know that school gardens lead to positive change elsewhere in the school community. And so I wanted to highlight some of the changes I've been seeing at other schools and some of the changes that I've seen at my school. We've seen increased student achievement in more than just science. We've seen genuine parent engagement. Student and community health has increased. School beautification, including murals. Increased teacher satisfaction and retention. And we've seen our school's mindset shift. So increased student achievement. In a literature review of over 152 articles and 48 studies that I did not do myself, they found that 93% of the studies had reported an increase in science, 80% in math, and 72% in language arts. We also know that school gardens helps low-income students perform better in school. And it helps our special education students. I'm a special education teacher, and that for me is first and foremost that my students who may not feel successful in an indoor classroom feel completely successful and feel like leaders in the outdoor classroom. This is one of my students learning how to do double-digit addition by counting the loofah flowers on one side of the on one side of the fence and adding it to the other side of the bed. It's about making things tangible and real and making them matter. It's about closing the achievement gap. This is another NOMI who I have a very special story to share. He actually ended up going to a different school because our school could not provide the program that he needed for his academic needs, but he loved being at our school because our school had a garden. So he was one of the garden NOMIs, and his mother shared that Friday mornings, NOMI's club mornings, was the only day that she could get him to school on time, that he jumped out of bed, he got ready, there wasn't a struggle at home, and here he was. So one of the days in garden club, there was a huge panic because the kids saw a cockroach. And this little guy ran over, he picked it up, and he looked at us, and we said, okay, where's a great place for a cockroach? There's always a place for everybody. Where is the place for the cockroach? And so he's like, I know, the compost. And without cringing or anything, he ran it over to the compost, dumped it into the compost, and when he turned around, all the kids that were panicking because of the cockroach were now cheering him on. And he got to be the hero that morning. And so when he ended up moving schools, his mother said, I'm really scared for him to go to another school. What if they don't have a school garden? We all know that parent engagement boosts our school's success rates. The thing is that our district is in a particular struggle because many of the families that we work with do not mirror this teaching population at our schools. That leads itself for a disconnect between relationships with the parents. Sometimes it stems from language, sometimes it's from socioeconomic class, but for whatever the reason, there's a big divide. So this is a parent at our school who on her days off, she works sometimes 6 days a week. On her day off, she's at her school all day long. She'll either work in the garden, she'll help us paint murals, she'll work in the teacher's classroom. And this is really what it's about. It's about opening up our school gardens as a space for parents to have a real role, a genuine role that really matters, that the teachers value, that the students value, and that they themselves see the impact of their work. I want to share a story about one of my colleagues, Miss Pate, that she said that before, when she would drive to the school, she would feel sadness. She would feel uncomfort because we're a Title I school in a low-income neighborhood, and so you can imagine the types of things that she would see on her drive to work. But through the garden, through working side by side with parents, she now feels comfortable engaging and speaking with parents who might not speak English, but she feels comfortable now. She said that it's become less of a school and more of a community center because it feels like it's ours. And that ours includes the parents. We know that children who are exposed to gardening, they also get moderate exercise, which if they're at Crestwood, they're getting heavy exercise. But it also leads to a lifetime of gardening and stewardships of preserving and regenerating our ecological systems. It's interesting that 50% of gardeners, including student gardeners, are likely to eat more vegetables than their non-gardening counterparts. We know that school gardens and community gardens help reduce violent crimes and nonviolent crimes and increase safety in neighborhoods. Our garden is right on the corner of one of our neighborhood streets. Everybody can see it, and our garden has never once been harmed by the community because the community has embraced it. So we're really fortunate to be part of that change. And it's because we have the mindset that our garden is the people's grocery. The food inside our garden belongs to the community. So one of the things that we know is that school gardens also help with school beautification. It's really important for the school to be beautiful. It's important for the language to change in our schools. Crestwood is one of the oldest schools in the districts, and before, I would hear constantly from our teaching staff, this school's so old, this school's kind of ugly, they should just tear it down and build us a new one. And now the conversation has shifted into, look at what we've done. Look at that mural. Look at this garden. Look at that garden. And that's a really powerful shift in our mindset. Murals tend to be a really great way for us to mirror our community, to speak to our community and make them feel comfortable as a way of inviting them in. And it's a way to honor cultural identities. We also know that murals promote public safety and they promote pride in the neighborhood. Last year, we were fortunate enough to be able to collaborate with our principal, and the garden club raised enough money to bring 2 artists out from LA, and they did this beautiful mural right at the entrance of our school, and this one by our library. As of now, we have a total of 11 new murals at our school, in part because of the garden program. This is a mural the mothers painted during our summer camp last year. This is a mural in our new bee garden. This is a mural by CJ the Kid, right on Wengler, right there for all the families to see as they're coming to school. And you should see the creative stories the kids write about the murals. We had a first grade teacher take her students out, and they had to create a story, and this is in the beginning of first grade, so they're still tiny little guys, about how this mural came to be. What were the driving factors that got that snail where it was, the balloon, everything. She invited me into her classroom when the kids shared the stories, and I was almost moved to tears because of the layers that the kids had been able to sift out of it. The moral stories, the drive, the grit, the not giving up, the working together, those were all evident in her stories. This is the mural that Julia painted, Julia Jamison. You just heard her dad speak. She did this as a part of a project with the kids. So for the summer camp, the kids have to write an application about why they want to participate in our summer camp. And in their application, they have to identify a need in our school. And the need of our school that some kids wrote was that it wasn't colorful enough. They needed more beautiful things to look at. And so a team from the school garden camp, what they did was they designed this mural with Julia. They learned all about color and composition. And if you can't see it, it says Farmers Market Earth, we care. All right, school gardens also lead to increased teacher satisfaction and retention. If you are a teacher, then you know what I'm talking about. There's research that shows that it leads to higher workplace morale and increased general satisfaction at the school. This is Miss Gress. She's a wonderful 5th grade teacher at our school who has taught almost the entire 5th grade curriculum with her students. This is one of the teachers that I co-teach with. So as a special education teacher, I go into her classroom and we teach together to make sure that we're meeting the needs of special needs students at our school. And Ms. Gress has gone above and beyond what it is to teach her students about ecological stewardship. But it's also benefited Ms. Gress in a lot of ways. She wrote this quote, and what I wanted to point out was that she wrote, the garden has got me excited about teaching science again. So we know that if teachers have fears of math or science, when they teach math or science, it's not going to come across as if they love it, because the kids can read right through us. So the first thing we have to do is get teachers to love the gardens. And now I have to tell you my story. My first year at Crestwood was my 5th year in education. And there's a lot of research that says that after 5 years, teachers are really likely to turn over to other careers, other work. And I was at that same place. I was wondering if the reason I had gotten into education was what I was still doing. And I felt defeated. I felt disenfranchised. I felt out of the community. I wasn't sure what my next step was. And then Kat and Miss Richardson and Kira got us a grant and got us a garden. And I happened to be walking by the garden with Miss Richardson, our principal, and she said, "Hey, you want to run this garden?" And I said, "Yeah, I can plant some flowers." I had no idea what I was getting myself into, but what I got myself into was a position, a part within the community of work that's going on that each and every one of you are doing. And yeah, it saved my teaching job, it saved my work, and it kept me in the field, and I don't see myself doing anything else. And lastly, I've seen a school mindset shift. Our school adopted something called the growth mindset a couple years ago. And what it is teaching students that even though there are hardships and challenges, there are things that help you persevere, help you keep your grit, help you have a fixed mindset, or change your fixed mindset from I can't do it to a growth mindset to let me figure out how I'm going to do it. And what I saw with the garden is the garden took that growth mindset and made it collective. It's not we can't do it, or it's not I can't do it, it's not we can't do it, it's how are we going to do it. And that extended from the students to the teachers to the parents. Gardens help us learn from our environment. You know, sometimes we make huge mistakes. We plant things where we shouldn't plant them. We put up a board that is cemented into the ground in the direct sunlight. But our growth mindsets and our gardens teach us to roll with the changes, to use observation and intuition to help us fix it for the next time, to help us adapt to these challenges that we have. If you can't commit to hard work, then you can't commit to having a garden. The kids see how hard we work, and in turn, they work twice as hard. The thing is that everybody is a beginner. So when I started teaching in the garden, I also had no idea what anything did or what it was or what the purpose was. So I went out there with my iPad, and the kids would ask me questions, and I'd be like, I don't know, let's Google it. And that's how I learned to garden. We're beginners with our students, and that's more powerful than we can recognize yet because our students get to be our teachers. This is a quote from one of the instructional coaches at Crestwood. And she made the metaphor about how a lot of the times our brains can be cluttered with weeds, but if you foster a growth mindset, then you are able to make a plan for removing those weeds and getting to your success. And the garden is that metaphor. The garden is that space where kids can truly see their growth mindset. It's ultimately the growth mindset is what takes us from this to that. It's really about seeing what's possible. And it's about growing our reality together. It's about teachers having a voice and a big say in what happens in their school. It's about teachers learning about their colleagues. For example, Miss Christine King over here. We've learned so much about her because she's been such an integral part of the garden team. We've learned that she's an amazing photographer, that she's an amazing cook, but that she's also an amazing teacher. And so that's what it's about.